Welcome back to the Vienna Gambit, and today is part 2 of this interesting gambit variation: e4, e5, knight c3. So this is a famous starting point of the Vienna Steinitz gambit line, which is just, I would say, the daughter of the king's gambit. So after the standard f4, and as I explained the last time, knight c3 has the idea just to have the improved version of the king's gambit in case of knight c6. So black is going to develop his knight and trying to support the d4 square. However, white is playing very aggressively f4, and after e takes f4, which now is most logical move, we can see the main difference from the standard position of the king's gambit, when white is having already developed his knight on c3 to the very active position and controlling the d5 square. Last time we were working on the classical, I would say, and the historically interesting move d to d4, which we call the Steinitz gambit, when black is allowed to play queen h4 check and just to destroy white's chances to achieve the clear positional advantage after bishop takes f4, and after queen h4 white has to move the king forward after king e2. However, as I explained, the latest theory and even the games between Steinitz and Chigorin show that white's king in the center not always so easy could support white's advantage, and in many variations the king is a good target for black's counterattack. So instead of d4, I say that the most natural and the strongest continuation is of course knight f3, preventing black's queen from going to h4, supporting the center square, so, and intending to play d2, d4, and later on bishop takes f4, achieving quite simple game and quite obvious advantage, because white is going to get rid of black's f4 pawn, and later on the bishop from f1 is coming to c4, so white is just would be in much better position. So already in 1887 it was played some game in Amsterdam between one Forrest Arnold and Schuhelt, where black immediately decided to play g5. So now position just a bit reminds the classical situation in the king's gambit, when black is at some point ready to play g4, and white could of course continue in the way of Muzio gambit, let's say after bishop c4 and then short castling and then d4, even ready to sacrifice. However, the position of the knight on c3 giving white additional alternative, so it means that white could immediately play h4, g4, and knight comes to g5. So this kind of a situation often we saw in the king's gambit. So when white is ready to sacrifice the piece on f7, let's say in case of h6. So this position we'll see later on in the game. Happen knight f6, d4, d6, bishop takes f4, and only now black decided to attack white's knight after h6. However, that led to the big problem. Knight takes f7, so this is a typical sacrifice. King takes f7, now black's king in the serious danger after bishop c4 check. King g7, and now possible of course for white to play immediate short castling, but queen d2 move is also quite unpleasant. So white is ready for long castling. Additional threat could be e4, e5, and the rook just cannot move from h8 because